Hi, it's Bruce Carson. I'm in Oceano, California today. I'm going to show you a house that was built in 1929. The reason why I'm doing this particular video is to help people that are trying to get some kind of a good deal and get into a lower priced home here in the southern part of San Luis Obispo County. We call it South County. Includes Pismo Beach, Arroyo Grande, Oceano, that's where we are here, Grover Beach, and Halcyon down the street. So let's take a look at this house. So what we're looking for is kind of some pros and cons and things that you can use to get a good deal on a house. So we're looking for the positives, and we're going to make note of that before we write an offer. And we're also going to note any cons that we see, and that way we can negotiate with the listing agent and the seller and try to get that price to come down. Right now, it's a 1,000 square foot home, and it's listed at $550,000. I think we could probably do some negotiating on this. So let's take a look. Something we want to certainly look for is curb appeal. So this is beautiful curb appeal. It doesn't look quite as nice on the outside, but that's okay. So if we were to buy this house, we could doll up the curb appeal in the front, and that's going to increase our value in the future. So another real bonus about this particular property is it has all this new concrete work. This is definitely not 1929 concrete. And they put in some drain systems to drain the water away from the house. We always like to see that, so we don't have to worry about water intrusion. Now behind me, we have, this is a pro, something that we really want to look for here is all this nice new concrete work. We have parking behind me. So we have a fence right here for people to walk into. And then on the other side, we have a double fence. You can open that up, and you can even drive an RV and park the RV down here. Okay, so over here on the side of the house, we can see that there is some deferred maintenance on this property. If we're looking for a deal on a house, we'd like to see that. And we want to consider, well, what's it going to take? Is it going to be expensive to repair this deferred maintenance? But it's certainly something that we're going to take into account. We're writing an offer on the house. So you can see behind me that we have some separation there between the bricks and the foundation. I'm not sure how big of a deal that is. You can also see behind me here, the paneling on the outside of the house. It has caulking in between, probably indicates that there's been some water intrusion, and that's something we want to start looking for. As an investor and someone looking for a deal, we love to see mold. You know, nobody else wants to see mold, but if you're looking for a discount, mold's actually a good thing. It's not that hard to take care of the mold. Now, also, we can see some screens that are damaged, and then we can see more markings on these walls. So I'm going to take my camera off the tripod now. I'm going to do a handheld walkthrough. We're going to look at some more things in this house. So for starters, we have some really nice, this is on the inside of the fence. You can see we have a couple of fences here. There's one gate to walk in, and then we have a big double gate here where you can drive a car or an RV in, which is really nice. This is a beautiful curb appeal here on the inside. And then you'll also see that we have a lot of space on this lot. So you can unlock this gate, you can drive through. You probably, if you trim these trees up here, you could fit an RV back here for RV parking, maybe even rent it out. We're in Oceano, so you could maybe make some money by renting out part of your property for RV parking. So let's look at the outside of the house. Again, it's 1929. It's about 1,000 square feet. We have a skylight up there. I'll show you with some drone video. The roof looks pretty good. Looks like it's been taken care of. As far as the outside of the house, let's take a quick look here. I opened up the water heater, and the water heater is outside. You know, the house needs a little love. Needs some power washing, or needs someone to pay attention to it. But it is a nice lot, and it's a nice location. We have nice mature fruit trees. It looks like we have oranges, probably lemons down there, and then another big lemon tree that you can share some lemons with your neighbors. So let's go in and take a look at the house. Now we are looking for things that we can use as a discount on a house like this. Again, we're listed at 550,000. We can see that this house has some definite needs, and we're going to have these come up on a home inspection, and we're also going to consider these when we're writing an offer on the house. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for some problems and then how to kind of figure out the cost and what we need to do to rectify these problems. So this house on the outside, you can see that it's a little bit kind of bumpy, the paneling, and it's dirty. The outside of this house is really dirty, but the bones are looking good. So I'm not seeing rotten wood, termite damage like that. You see that piece of wood hanging down? That's probably some termite damage or some kind of wood destroying organism. But we don't see a whole lot of it. See, there's a little more in that eave. That's going to come up on a pest inspection. But these are things that we want to be looking at. Now look at on this entry deck. Okay, it's just plywood. Not very good for curb appeal, not very good for the equity of the home. So if you were to buy this house, what's it going to take to make this look good or better and then increase the value? As we step into the home, then we see the walls. This is a 1929 built house. So these walls are most likely not drywall. They're very solid. And so that really adds to the construction of the house. Other things that we want to be looking at, electrical. In 1929, they did not have three-prong plugs. So this house has some electrical upgrades. We want to see that. That is good. All of these outlets are grounded and grounded there. So that's all really good news. In this kitchen, while we have grounded out, those are going to need to be upgraded to be GFCI. As we look here, we see some water damage behind the sink and some kind of something growing, mold or fungus or something. So that's good if we're looking for discounts. Something else that we want to do is we want to look under the sink. We want to see if we can gain access to the pipes. I don't see any pipes down there. We should have a GFCI plug, and we don't. We'll find some other pipes later, but what we're looking at here is, again, some moisture problems. Some issues have happened, so water's come down there and created some problems. You can see that these walls are really dirty. So this house needs paint. It needs paint on the inside and the outside. So if you're one that knows how to paint and you go out there and paint yourself, you're going to save you a whole bunch of money. Paint's not cheap. It's expensive now. But paying a painter is even more expensive. Now, we always want to look at the windows. These windows, because they're aluminum, and I can see that they are single pane. So those are old windows, and you can see old screens as well. So the screens and the windows, that's probably an upgrade that we'll want to do. Also, if we were looking at two-prong versus three-prong plugs, that probably means that we have old wiring in the house. We don't know what the wiring looks like in the house, but I'm assuming that the wires inside the walls have been updated because we have the three-prong plugs. We want to confirm that with a home inspection. But if they were just two-prong, then we might see wires that are in 1929, they just bolted them together. They were insulated in like fiberglass, and it's just not to today's code. So if we saw that, we would want to upgrade that. Here's some more mold and water damage right down here. Looks really bad, looks really ugly. If you were to tear that away, clean it up, get rid of the mold, and then paint, then that's going to look a lot better and increase the value of this home. Okay, so in the bathroom, here are some issues that we would want to ask for discounts, and then we would later fix this up. We can see these floors are uneven, and the flooring is uneven. So this is really, really uneven. It jumps up, and You know, everything around the toilet, you see there's some moisture around the toilet. So that looks all right. It could be cleaned. And then let's look and see if we can see what's happening under the sink. Now, under here, we are seeing what we don't want to see for plumbing. You see those pipes right there? Those are galvanized steel pipes. And we don't want to see that. We also don't want to see these pellets down here. That looks like some kind of rat poison or a pest poison. And you can see that they had some rodents or something coming up through this hole. This steel wool is kind of a dead giveaway. They should have left that there because it was filling that hole and trying to keep rodents out. And it looks like they just pushed it out because there's galvanized pipes in there. They need to be replaced with copper or with the new material that we're using is called PEX. PEX lines are blue for cold and red for hot, but they're PVC or it's plastic tubing and it's flexible. So it's really easy to run through walls. But if we find a galvanized plumbing situation like this, where there's old pipes throughout the house, well, running PEX is a whole lot cheaper than hiring a plumber to come out and do all the sweating with copper pipes. In this room, we have some uneven flooring. Again, it feels a little bit shaky. Now, you don't necessarily have to let that scare you away. There are ways to address sinking foundations. We also have damage here at this window. So this is indicating, one, the window's broken. So maybe water was just coming in through that broken window and created this. So maybe if there was a renter that lived here, they might have let that go. Cracked window panes. And these again are the single pane aluminum windows. So let's go and find some more things to look at. Now, here's an interesting thing. This house is sided with some press board that's obviously creating some problems. It doesn't necessarily mean that, it's not structurally sound. It seems pretty sound. We have a window that needs to be replaced, a screen. But if we could, I don't know what kind of material we would put over this press board material, but we want to cover that up before we paint the house. Other issues that I'm seeing, these are going to be some more pest problems. You can see right here, those are termite droppings. So the house has termites. Don't get scared though, because just about every single house here on the Central Coast has either termites or some kind of wood destroying organism. It's just where we live. We have lots of termites. And we have a lot of moisture because of our marine layers. We have now up here, we can see fascia boards. Those are all going to have to be replaced. Those are going to be called out on a pest inspection. So is the film, the insulation that's filling in some holes up there. There's some cracks in the stucco. So these are all things that, if you're writing an offer on the house, probably want to sit down with your team, whomever that is. If it's a contractor, if it's friends or family, or you want to kind of figure out how much would it take to repair this house and bring it up to, modern codes, nice and safe, and so everyone's happy. Now, here is a bonus. You always want to look at the electrical. We looked inside and we saw that there were 3-prong plugs. So that was good. Now, this meter, this is really important. This is a nice new meter. I don't know how old it is. The reason why we know that it's new, one, we're looking at breakers. If it was the original 1929, then we would be looking at ceramic fuses. Another indicator is that we have everything is labeled. So that means that it's new. Plus, just looking at this box, it just looks new compared to the rest of the house. Siding and everything out here, they've had some leaks. We'd have to do some repairs. Look at the size of this lot. Now, if you were to buy this lot here on the Central Coast, municipalities, I'm not exactly sure about Oceano where we are now because it's an unincorporated little town and it's run by the county of San Luis Obispo. But with all of this space, this house is a 1,000 square foot house. We have ingress and egress through that gate. That's really important if you're applying to put in a second home on a lot like this. So you could put in what's called an accessory dwelling unit. So a couple options. You can make this house bigger, or you could put a second house here in the backyard. Now, all of a sudden, you have an income producing property or a property where you can house a larger family. But that's definitely going to increase the value of the property. So I want you to, when we're looking for deals, yes, look for a deal. Don't focus on the ugly, bad. Focus on the potential. Because, I mean, look at this. If we had a house back here, someone could literally drive all the way back. They could park. They'd have a totally private. They may even have private access right there off of this alley. So then the main homeowner gets the front half of the land, and the accessory dwelling unit gets the back. So we need some fencing. We'll put an accessory dwelling unit back here, and we could really make some really good income, or again, house more people. So this has been a tour looking for hidden gems of the Central Coast, specifically South County of San Luis Obispo, Central Coast deals. So my name is Bruce Carson with Kellerway Coast. If you have any questions, if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest, rent, or just have questions about real estate, feel free to give me a call. That's what I do full time, and I absolutely love my job. I love it when people call me and looking for help to move in and out of the Central Coast.